Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020. The time is approximately 9:38 a.m.
Could you speak up, please?
Can we have a roll call vote? Roll call attendance.
Commissioner Ahmed.
Here.
Commissioner Kutagawa.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Forniciari.
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Yay! Commissioner Luons.
Here.
Commissioner Sadwani. Commissioner Sinai.
Here.
Commissioner Toledo.
Here.
Commissioner Turner.
Here.
Commissioner Taylor.
Here.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Here.
Commissioner Yee. Commissioner Yee. You're muted.
Your voice is very chipmunky.
The joys of technology. Everyone's present, Commissioner Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any general announcements? Seeing none, can we hear the instructions to call in for public comment?
So before I do those to the public, we're going to present to you a different system than the ATT. Hopefully it will be a little bit more simpler and straightforward for you. The instructions that I'm reading to you are also posted on the website. So in order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment during their meeting by phone. There will be opportunities to address the commissioners regarding the items on the agenda, and there will also be opportunities for the public to submit general comments about items not on the agenda. Please note that the Commission is not able to comment or discuss items not on the agenda. The Commission will advise the viewing audience when it is time to submit public comment. The Commissioners will then allow time for those who wish to comment to dial in. So, to call in on your phone, dial the telephone number that is provided on the live stream feed. Next, when prompted, enter the meeting ID number, which is also provided on the live stream feed using your dial pad. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound sign. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue from which a moderator will begin unmuting callers to submit their comment. You will also hear an automatic message to press *9 to raise your hand, indicating that you wish to comment. Again, you would be pressing *9 to raise your hand, which indicates that you wish to comment. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will unmute you and you will hear an automatic message to the effect, the host would like you to talk and to press *6 to speak. You will have 3 minutes to provide your comments. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak and please turn down the live stream volume. The Commissioners will take comment for every action item on the agenda, and as you listen to the online video stream, the Chair will be calling for public comments. This is the time to call in. The process for making a comment will be the same each time, beginning by dialing the telephone number provided on the live stream feed and following the steps as I just stated. Again, these instructions are on the website if you would like to download them and use them. Thank you. Chair?
Thank you, Raul.
You're welcome.
Katie, I see we have some folks in the queue. Can we let the first person in?
Yes, if you wish to make a comment and haven't done so, please press *9 to raise your hand. It's not letting me. If you could hold on for just one moment, please.
Yes, hello, this is Lori Schellenberger. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's a little tricky getting. Hello?
We had multiple people unmute themselves. If I did. So one moment. So the last four, 2829, if you could state your comment.
Yes, my name's Renee Westa Lusk. I live in Ridgecrest, California. I'm located in eastern Kern County. I have two, I guess, questions that are not on the agenda. One is maybe the commission can address that at a later meeting about, first of all, the delay of the census. Will that impact the Redistricting Commission's ability to meet California state deadlines for redistricting if the census data isn't given to them in time to do the redistricting according to California state laws? There's a Brennan report that was on the last commission's last meeting of June 6th that reported the consequences of the delayed census taking. So that is a major concern to me. My second comment is I hope all the redistricting commissioners have read over the Redistricting 101. It was a PowerPoint that was on the Redistricting Commission website that describes the basis on which the redistricting is to be done, and I hope they all take into consideration about contiguity and communities of interest, because those are really the most, or they call it municipal geography, which incorporates communities of interest. And to be fair to the last commission paid huge attention to the municipal geography and communities of interest, and I believe that's the best way to make this nonpartisan, because I think the commission did a great job in the last redrawing the lines because they kept politics out of it and based it on directives in proper directives in redrawing the lines so they're fair and stay out of political reasons for drawing lines. That's my comment. Thank you.
This is the court reporter. Could the speaker please spell your name, and can we be reminded when speakers do speak, just please spell their name when they first log on.
Okay, it's Renee, R-E-N-E-E. The first name, there's two E's after the N, and the last name is W-E-S-T-A, and then there's a hyphen, and then it's Lusk, capital L-U-S-K.
Thank you.
And we're going to our next caller. If you could please spell your name after you state it for the court reporter. If you can hit *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you please spell your name for the court reporter?
Good morning. My name is Michelle DiGiulio, M-I-C-H-E-L-L-E, C-I capital G-U-I-L-I-O. I'm one of the former 14 commissioners from the 2010 commission, being one of the no party preference members who is now just an average citizen. I'm still in Stockton, busy with my 4 kids who are now teenagers and busy working for the Stockton Fire Department. It's great to see all the new commissioners. Congratulations. And while initially reluctant to address the commission, I realize that some words of wisdom may come in handy as you develop your own approach to redistricting 2020. I've broken it down to 3 areas that can be summarized as people, process, and pressure. I'll try to make it fast, but if you may need to indulge me a bit towards the end. The first area is people. Basically, you, the commissioners. You've probably realized that you'll be connected with one another pretty intensely for the next year plus and the following 10 years. And at 14 people with different backgrounds and stories, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of building relationships and camaraderie early amongst your group. I know you have the added challenge of COVID, but because you are all new to one another as well as this process, building your relationships with each other will be fundamental to your success in many ways. Because each and every one of you at some level will have to work towards consensus and even compromise at some point on some topic guaranteed. And you can't do these things without a foundation of knowing each other. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. Normally I would say this will happen with meals and travel and committees and meals, carpools, and even more meals, but time together in any form. But for now, just start somewhere. Get to know each other. You'll need it later. Okay, my next set of words of wisdom revolve around the process. I'll start off with a suggestion. If you ever have questions about the intention of the voters, first ask them. Bring in those that created the proposition. California Common Cause, League of Women's Voters, and others. They can be extremely helpful. Now, about the process. The first 2 lessons are simple reminders. First, fundamentally, you can't draw the lines and start mapping until you have the census data in March, public input, and VRA legal assistance. Securing these things early will help you tremendously. The second reminder is that the line drawing criteria is, of course, ranked. This is your guideline for everything. You will come back to the ranking over and over again, and you will have to prioritize some things over others due to their position in the rank. The next key to the process is transparency, which is very important to the legitimacy of the process. If there is daylight, there is the opportunity for the public to respond to the process as well as better accept the outcome. In addition to legitimacy, transparency allows for checks and balances. Transparency allows for people to comment on previous issues. When the process is open, people are held accountable. A quick example is that a former student brought to my attention Doug Johnson's presentation to you from the Rose Institute, in which Doug had multiple drastic mischaracterizations of the last commission's work. But that's the beauty of transparency. Someone, somewhere will call people out when they are wrong or intentionally misleading to you. That transparency loop will be a great benefit to you in this process. Finally, my last bit of procedural advice, but maybe one of my most important, is to remember that you are the line drawers. You are not hiring line drawers. You are hiring an organization with technical capacity to help the commission draw the lines. To this end, I would highly recommend not structuring it so that technical consultants go off and draw the lines. There's way too many implications with each line movement, and all commissioners and the public must see how each line comes into existence for the acceptance of the process. To this end, I would just maybe briefly suggest that you give a quick look at the line drawing sessions from the last commission. Not because it's how it should be done, but because you can get a flavor of what it's like and how that nuanced line drawing actually is. It's definitely a process worth a peek. And finally, my last section is pressure. It's quick and can easily be summed up as the good, the bad, and the extra. The good pressure, that is public testimony input. Highlights include the fact that you will have the privilege of hearing from your fellow Californians. Your appreciation for California will deepen because you will learn something new about the people and places of California, even if this has been your home for decades upon decades. It will be one of the most challenging things to do, but one of the most rewarding. The bad pressure, some reality. Now, if it hasn't already been said to you, let me be the first to say it out loud. There are people that want you to fail, not aggressively and not to anyone specifically, but generally speaking. This includes legislators, lobbyists, line drawers, influencers, and not just from California, but from other states. They want you, the commission, to be unsuccessful in redistricting because 1, if no maps are adopted, then the responsibility will go to the judges. And 2, more insidiously, if you fail, it will prove their point that, quote, regular citizens don't have the skill or ability to redistrict, and that power should be back in the hands of legislators. Or in the case of other states, it will be used as proof that independent commissions won't work in their state. Don't underestimate the powers around you that aren't always in your corner. Another reason you will need to trust each other. You 14 are the most invested in this being successful, and you'll need to lean on each other heavily. Lastly, the extra pressure. As a bonus, the commission also carries the extra weight on its shoulders that you have each the embodiment of Californians placing their trust in their fellow citizens. You will also be an example of what has been lost somewhere in our political culture. Collaboration, compromise, consensus, working together even when you don't agree, especially when you don't agree. Ultimately, your success means fair representation. Something extra, but something very important. So that brings me to the end of my very long words of wisdom for your consideration. If it helps inform your discussions, great. If not, I've had my say like so many other Californians will do. Either way, I wish each and every one of you the best of luck. Thanks.
The next caller, if you could press *6.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you please state and spell your name for the court reporter?
Yes, good morning. This is Lori, Lori, Schellenberger, Schellenberger. I'm the redistricting consultant for Common Cause. And I want to say good morning to everyone. And I'm actually calling in just with a few words about public participation and facilitating participation. And really want to say, first of all, I appreciate the demonstrated commitment that the commission has toward being as inclusive as possible and making sure the public has the ability to participate. And with that in mind, I had 3 things that I wanted to flag for you. The first is notice regarding your meetings and the agenda. There is a way to sign up on the website for notices, but we aren't currently getting those. And so we previously received emails from the auditor's office about the selection process. We don't get those emails anymore, and there aren't any new emails being generated from the list that I'm assuming is being amassed, but perhaps just not operationalized yet. So I just wanted to flag that because that's an important way for folks to understand when meetings will be happening and when the agendas have been posted. And I want to preface this with recognizing you're still getting up and running, and I know some of this is just ramping up and getting staffed, but just wanted you to know that folks aren't currently getting those emails. Second is regarding your agenda, and we raised this during your last meeting, but to the extent that you can, at the beginning of each meeting and at the end of each day, let the public know what items you will be covering, and for any items that are time certain, letting them know so that folks can plan around that. And then the third is regarding the dialing in, which actually this system seems to be a little bit easier in terms of folks getting into the queue. But I just want to make sure that one of the things, I know you were working in that waiting period while people have the opportunity to dial in. I just want to make sure that you realize it can be a little confusing and cumbersome. This now includes a passcode that people have to enter. So just being patient and allowing, and I would say up to 5 minutes for people to figure out how to dial in and not include that instruction period, because some people are listening to that to understand how to do it. Even to the extent maybe you want to take a short break while people are getting into the queue, but to consider that there is a lag time and it can take a few minutes for people to figure out how to get in that queue. And with that, I thank you and good luck with your meeting over the next few days.
That is everybody in the queue at this time.
Thank you. So moving on to the next agenda item, commissioner updates. So items of interest to the commission. For this item, we can just popcorn. So if any of my colleagues have anything that they would like to share that would be of interest to the rest of the commission, please raise your hand and we can start that conversation. Yes, Commissioner Sinai.
I don't know what the intent is, if it's just our personal life or if it's actually
things that are on the agenda for this. So if you could clarify that a little bit more.
I believe this item was in response to just general updates that would be of interest to the whole commission. Whether you define that as personal updates, it is up to you. But I would like to keep it somewhat consistent with the commission work. Yes, Commissioner Fernandez, and then back to Sinai.
I think I remember from last time the way I had proposed it would be, we talked about making sure we all know what we're doing, just to make sure we're transparent. So I think part of it also had to do like if you speak at any events or you went somewhere or you read something, just to kind of keep us all up to date in terms of the activities that we're doing that are related to this redistricting process, just so that we're all transparent.
So on that note, that's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure. I did notice that on the agenda, the Public Education Outreach and Engagement Committee, Public Advisory Committee or what subcommittee that Vasquez and I are on, it does not show up in today's agenda nor the October 5th agenda. And I was also concerned that we created an October 5th agenda without the input from the commission. I thought that was part of the work that we would do at the end of each one for the next one. So I did want to put that out at the very, very beginning. As part of the outreach subcommittee, I checked in with council and was told, yes, you and Vasquez together can talk to some of the groups out there and get some ideas. I will tell you that sometimes I wear multiple hats, so I may be on a call with one hat and other information comes up. So I am a sharer, an information sharer, so I apologize if you get too many emails from me, just delete them if they're not of interest. But I do believe in sharing what I can. And I'm looking to get, one of the emails that one of the webinars I went to was on the census legacy. It was a funders only webinar, but I do have the access to it. And that had a lot of interesting conversations around the census blocks and how to build them, especially in the state of California for other things. And redistricting did come up in that conversation. So that might be of interest. I did speak with the former commissioner, I'm forgetting Connie's last name. I apologize.
Malloy.
Thank you, Malloy. She used to work with the Irvine Foundation, and I also spoke with Amy Dominguez Arns, who also, she was a consultant for the funding for the 2010, as well as the funding now for the 2020. And she, I think, would be a great speaker at our next meeting, just because she worked the landscape both times, and she can tell us how much funding is out there for outreach, what worked, what didn't. And my main question for folks was what worked, what didn't last time, as well as if they had any best practices out there around how to engage people in the time of COVID. And I also spoke to, yesterday, Commissioner Vasquez and I spoke to Ben Williams from the National Committee of State Legislature. No, I got the C wrong. But anyway, again, the same type of conversation. They were sharing that there's a lot of commissions out there that probably the commissioners from different commissions would love to just sit around and talk about this in different states, because it's such a big question. But I am putting together kind of a literature review, as well as I will have a report when we're on the agenda. Thank you.
Commissioner Fernandez?
Yeah, I just wanted to address a couple of the issues or concerns that Commissioner Sinai brought up. First of all, yes, the subcommittee for outreach wasn't there, and I did bring that up, but unfortunately what happens is the agenda has to be posted 2 weeks prior to the meeting, and it had already been posted, and I realized that they had left the outreach subcommittee that you and Commissioner Vasquez are on. So it should be corrected for future meetings. And in terms of the agenda already being out for the next meeting, again, it has to be posted 14 days prior, and that was as of yesterday, which is prior to our meeting today. So it's kind of, if we're gonna have almost weekly meetings, it's gonna be very difficult to try to have the full commission contribute to that, other than if, you know, we do it some other format. So I think it's good once we get to agenda item number 11 to maybe really talk about that, like having a meeting every week. That means we're posting agendas every week. So I'm sure there's a way that we'll be able to do it, but I think as we're learning right now, we're trying to figure it out, and it's not intentional. And so we just kind of went with what we had discussed last time in terms of what we wanted to be on agendas for the be on future agendas, and that's kind of how we posted it for the next one.
Just to add to that, with the whole staggered agenda posting, so as of today, myself and Commissioner Fernandez are leading, but Commissioner Fernandez was only vice chair starting today, but the agenda was posted yesterday for the meeting that she will be chairing next time. So there's a little passing the baton trust game that we have to play with each other, that we would be chairing a meeting that we might not necessarily have put the agenda together for. Do you have any other commissioners with thoughts on this item before we move on? Commissioner Sarwani?
For future, I feel like maybe we want to go back and revisit. I know we had adopted last time our understanding of of how long the chairs would hold their position. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we said a minimum of 3 meetings or something like that, or I forget the wording that we had, but perhaps we want to, we'll talk about it later, but perhaps we want to think about having commissioners, if we're doing these 2 days every week moving forward, perhaps a commissioner takes 2 weeks, so there's 4 days there, and then there's a little bit more continuity across. Just one suggestion. In terms of updates, for full transparency, I teach a class in California politics, so we were talking about redistricting. We have a guest speaker coming in this week, Bruce King. He's a longtime redistricting scholar at Stanford.
Any last minute thoughts on this agenda item before we move on? And there's plenty of room at the end also to share as well. Commissioner Anderson and Sinai?
Just a quick on the subcommittee. It actually says subcommittee updates, so I don't quite understand why we can't put all the subcommittees in there. Just because a particular one isn't listed, I don't see, you know, we certainly, when we were putting it together, it's certainly under the topic. And I think that's certainly within the purview, which is when we originally were talking about these, understanding that the 14-day requirement, we were putting topics together, and to say, well, since we didn't specifically say that particular one, I think that's, getting sort of too nitty-pick, like, it's too specific, and I don't think we need to limit ourselves quite that much. I mean, I'd like Raul to please clarify, but I think we're really being, over. It should just be updated, when we repost, like that's because I think most people don't actually print out the agenda until the meeting before, and it's not like we're adding a new topic. It's just being a little bit more specific. And as one of the Gloria Schellenberger just called in, said, at the beginning of each day, if you could tell us what's happening when, that certainly says now. Notice that there is a highlight. It's still under the same topic, but just being a bit more specific. I think that's certainly within the intent of the Bagley-Keene Act, keeping things open. So.
I'm not sure that's accurate. What I have heard often is put as much as you can in the agenda so you're as clear as you can. And so it would be listing all the subcommittees so that the community knows what we're going to talk about. So we do need to be careful about that. regarding creating the agenda, I'm not sure why Fernandez could not work. That was kind of why we had the chair and the vice chair. You can have up to 2 people working on things. So the vice chair should be pulled in when creating the next agenda. And I would recommend not putting the let's talk about the next agenda last, because I tried to talk about the agenda last time. I worked really hard on collecting what everybody was saying through all 8 days or 7 days of meetings, and really felt like I was cut short. No one asked me for my notes. I worked really hard on that, and nobody came back asking for it. So I do recommend that we move it earlier, and we actually take it seriously about let's look at all of October. And we also, I know Commissioner Sadwani and I and others, we really need our dates planned out through December. It's not working for me to have just October. So because people are in such a hurry to finish the meeting, can I please ask us to move that item closer to the beginning? I also would like us not to feel rushed about selecting staff and all that, and we can talk about that during but I'm really feeling at times that people are rushing us when we don't need to be rushed.
Commissioner Akutagawa?
If I can just make a suggestion about the committee updates, given that the likelihood, at least for the next few meetings, is that the committees will have updates, can we just have them as a standing item on the agenda, at least for right now? And if for whatever reason there isn't really a substantive update that the committee wants to report on, they can always say, you know, we don't have anything to report at this time. And then that way, then, you know, we don't have to be concerned about, oh, this wasn't on the agenda. That's just one thought about just making sure that then people know that there will be an expectation of a conversation. And if there isn't, there isn't.
Commissioner Fernandez?
And that is what we talked about. And in terms of me developing the agenda for the next meeting alone, I did not. It was actually started with Commissioner Ahmad. And then I was brought in towards the end of it, which was fine. So I wasn't in a bubble. And so it was very rushed, and I really did not like that feeling. And I don't think any of us like that rush feeling. But in terms of the subcommittee, that was something we talked about, that we would definitely want to include all of them. I even have it on here. I have my outreach for there. And that it would be an ongoing agenda item until at some point it might not be needed, because once we fill certain positions, you know, that subcommittee will no longer be needed, right? But yeah, we'll definitely keep it on there. And you're right, if there's nothing to report, there's nothing to report. And I do agree with the others where I would like to have a schedule out to December, but I guess we can talk about that later when we talk about 11, unless we move that up, which would be a great idea. And I would also like to say, as Commissioner Sinai, that I did feel rushed last time. I felt like every time we were cut off because we're going to be at the hour-and-a-half mark. Okay, so we take a break and we come back. That's what we signed up for. I'd rather feel comfortable that everybody got to say what they needed to say, and I feel comfortable coming back. I feel comfortable knowing what we're going to do for the next meeting. Then okay, it's 1.5 hours and we're done. So yeah, I don't mind going beyond taking a break and coming back.
Any other commissioner updates? Yes, Commissioner Kutagawa.
I have a question, and maybe this is more about process, but to Commissioner Fernandez's point about going beyond, you know, I'm fine with that. I think I have a question in terms of, and maybe this is more directed to Raul and Marian. Our scheduled time is to end at 4:30. Is there a limitation or a restriction that we have to be conscious of if we go beyond, let's say 4:30, 4:45, and then go to 5 o'clock or even 5:30?
So you have contractors in place providing services, and so really the fallout, if you even want to call it that, is just the additional costs. It's always good to have folks advised you could go over, but most of your service providers have been very accommodating. So I don't think that's as much of an issue. Did that respond to your question, Commissioner Kutagawa? It's costs. That's the, and it's not a limiter.
Okay.
That's the impact.
Okay, I thank you. That was helpful. I think I just want to be able to make sure that we understand that we're not going to be running up against, like, we have to finish by a certain time regardless of where we are if we're going to go further. I guess the question I would have is given that we've run over all of our meetings, is stating that 4:30 as an end time, is that realistic? Because I'm scheduling meetings around it, so, and I'm sure others may be doing so, and I'm perfectly fine. Just tell me what time I need to be on, and I will be on. I just want to be able to also balance that with also understanding, are we going to run up against other personnel time costs, restrictions, labor laws, things like that. But also still honor the idea that I think the conversations that we're having, especially because we're, because of we have to give so much notice, we can't just tack on, let's meet tomorrow because we didn't finish this conversation. So, I just want to be conscious about how do we balance all of those things and still be able to ensure that we have the kind of robust conversation that we've been having and honoring everybody's, ideas and thoughts too.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes, Commissioner Lamons, I'm aware you were ahead of me. Do you want to go? Okay. The thing I think I wanted to say, I appreciate the comments from everyone ready for a new week and all. I think what will be beneficial is as we get an opportunity to learn each other's kind of personality and work style and what have you. Because for me, a lot of it has to do with the discipline as well. Discipline in comment, participation, etc. And I think there are a lot of repeated thoughts throughout our day that sometimes it feels like each person feels that. I can recall a conversation or a comment that I believe it was Commissioner Fornashari said, unless I have something different or additive to say, I'll probably just listen. And that's kind of a little bit my personality as well, but it seems that throughout our day, and perhaps if we can be more mindful of this, not to necessarily rush people in their thought process. I understand people process and think through things differently, but it does appear that sometimes there are times throughout our day that could perhaps have been a little bit more disciplined in how we approach it. That does push us into the end of the day. And we do have contractors working, and we do not have the luxury of just continuing to push things out to the next day. So as chair, it gets to be difficult. You're watching time, you're watching the calendar, you know what's on, you want everyone to talk. And then sometimes it seems like, okay, that was good because it came from a different person, but it really was the same thing that was said before. And so I just think that as we learn personality type styles and learn to value everyone's input, that's great. And I'm hoping and hopeful for the magnitude of what we need to learn and get accomplished, that we're also being a little bit aware and disciplined of the comments as well.
Any additional comments at this time?
Just a suggestion on the agenda. If something comes up that was not mentioned in the meeting, it is perfectly appropriate for a commissioner to send an email to the chair and vice chair suggesting items for them to be included on the agenda. And the chair and vice chair can do that, even if it did not come up during a full meeting.
Yes, Commissioner Fernandez.
Actually, I'm not sure if this is part of this agenda item or later, but Marian and Raul, once you post the agenda, and then if you notice that maybe there's issues or things that are missing or changes or you want to move things around, can you repost an agenda? Or once you post it, You can't make any changes in that 2-week block before the meeting.
You cannot add items to the agenda. You could have a discussion, if not an action item, on in your general announcements, if you wanted to have a discussion of something, but particularly anything that's going to be an action item must be on the agenda, and that cannot be changed after the 14-day notice. It can certainly be moved around. There's nothing wrong with adjusting when each item comes up.
Marion, excuse me, so for my clarification, you can't make a revision or an addition meaning like a clarification.
You
So
could
here-
do a clarification. You
So,
could not
well,
do an
let-
addition.
Let me give an example. So there's presenters that haven't been obtained yet for one of the items on October 5th. And so there's a placeholder there for that, to add them and to post that. So that would be permissible, yes?
The topic and that there will be a presentation is noticed. The name of the presenter does not need to be included in the initial 14-day notice.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, Commissioner Vasquez.
So to that end, we could add, if we had items we wanted to discuss but not take action on, could we then not add that? So for example, the outreach committee, because there's no action.
I agree with
associated
Commissioner
that committee.
Anderson that you can have a report from all subcommittees under that general agenda item. And as Commissioner Fernandez said, in the future, we'll make sure that it's listed as a standard item on every agenda.
Right, and so, but then likewise, if there are discussion pieces we thought had been added, we get to the meeting and we realize, oh, we wanted to finish this conversation or we wanted to have this discussion, et cetera. We can still have that discussion. as
Not a
long as we
discussion. You
want.
could have an announcement under the general announcements of items that you wanted to bring up to the general information of the commission.
All right. Thanks.
Commissioner Kennedy, I saw the yellow box circle your square. Do you have anything to share at this time? Or any thoughts you would like to share?
I'm here. I'm still struggling with technology. I did listen into the first meeting, or at least part of the first meeting of the Michigan Redistricting Commission last week. That was an interesting experience, learning how there are similarities and differences between how they're structured and how we're structured, and so forth. But for those who didn't, I would encourage you to take the opportunity whenever their next scheduled meeting is to listen in and get a sense of how they're dealing with things.
Any additional comments at this time related to item number 4? Yes, Commissioner Taylor.
Yeah, not to be repetitive or not judicious with my statements, to add on to what Commissioner Kennedy stated, the Michigan Independent Redistricting meetings are available on YouTube, the entirety of both their first 2 meetings.
All right. So in the spirit of sharing how our personalities are, our working styles, I'm very much so a go down the list kind of person. And my hope is that as we go through the agenda items, we have a substantial amount of time for item 11, in which we can discuss what we want in our future meetings or any suggestions or recommendations on structure, etc. So if it's okay with folks, I would like to move on to number 5, which is the update on the 2020 census. So the report on the progress of California census. So there is a publicly available website, 2020census.gov, that reports self-response rates. As of this morning, the national self-response rate was 66.2%. and the California self-response rate was 68.6%. The website also includes a map of the different counties, congressional districts, cities, and then also by census tract as well. And in 2010, California's self-response rate was 68.2%. Currently, the highest reported count, or the highest self-response rate by county is sitting at 77.8%, and the lowest self-response rate by county is sitting at 21.7% within the state of California. If you are curious, I highly encourage you all to go check out that publicly available website. Again, that's 2020census.gov. I will hand it over to Marion to go over the various litigations related to the census.
Thank you. And I think I'm going to review a little bit, since some members of the public may not have been aware of all the developments happening with the census. Early this spring, the federal census did announce that they were going to delay for some 4 months. In response to that, there was litigation in California, which actually gave the commission an extra 4 months also to prepare the maps if the census were delayed for that amount of time. So you were relieved from those statutory deadlines if the census does come to the state late. Subsequently, the Census Bureau announced that it was, instead of delaying, it was moving up the process of collecting the data and was going to end it early. Not surprisingly, there's been litigation over that as well. There are 2 lawsuits currently pending, one in California, one in New York, that deal with the proposed speed up. One had a hearing on Monday, the other had a hearing on Tuesday. I've not heard of a result in either one of those cases. There was a news report saying the judge seemed inclined to grant an order to the census that it continue until through October, as the federal statute indeed requires. And as soon as we get a ruling on that, I will pass it along to the commissioners. Interestingly, in the case in California, there was a hearing a couple of days ago where the judge really criticized the Census Bureau for not producing documents that it was supposed to produce, and indicated that in the meantime it would extend the temporary restraining order until it could have a full hearing with all the necessary documents. That hearing did happen yesterday, and as I said, the press reports indicated the judge seemed inclined to issue the preliminary injunction compelling the census to continue, but I don't know the exact result of that. There's also been legislation proposed. We talked about 2 of those bills last time, and perhaps Commissioner Sadwani and Toledo would like to give a report on the letters they sent out concerning those 2 bills. There's also a new 2 bills that are bipartisan efforts in the Senate and the House of Representatives. One final note, as I think we talked about last time, the litigation over whether or not the census would ask for undocumented status. There was an injunction issued requiring the Census Bureau not to ask that question. The administration has filed a petition with the Supreme Court to seek a review of that order and has asked for a speedy resolution. The court has not ruled on that request yet. The court has had other things on its mind, obviously, in the last few days. But as soon as there's any decision on whether there's going to be hearing in the Supreme Court on the undocumented immigrants issue, I will pass that along. Commissioner Sadwani and Toledo, do you want to report on your letters?
Perhaps Raul can report. I only learned this morning that it was sent out. I haven't seen it.
So the letters were sent out, hard copy. I haven't had a chance to post them yet. I don't know what else there is to report on that.
Unless there are any questions?
No questions? All right. I'm sure we will hear more about this later on this week if there are developments. So moving on to item 6, back to you, Marion, about council updates.
I don't really have anything further in addition to what I've just said.
All right, so at this time, our 90-minute break is actually at 11:20. I'm sorry, 11:05. We will be going into closed session now to address item 7 on the agenda. Do you all think it's okay for us to take our break now so that when we return, we are not interrupted for another hour and a half?
That's fine.
Yes. Commissioner Sinat?
Do we want any public comments on item 7 now before we go into or I know it's awkward because we're going into private, but if people have thoughts on questions and stuff, do we want to hear about it now or later?
It's up to you. You could have public comment now if you wish.
Any thoughts on that, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Turner and then Anderson.
I think my only thought was I was actually wondering if we needed public comment because of the other agenda items we went through. Typically, I thought we were to have public comment after each agenda item.
For any action item that's required, for other information items, you certainly may.
Just for the record, my question was exactly the same as Commissioner Turner.
Yes, Commissioner Sinai.
If there's no one saying no, then I would ask or whatever for us to do public comments now, so that the public feels like they had their say.
Sure. Raul, can we hear the instructions to call in?
Certainly. So the commission will advise the viewing audience when it is time to submit public comment. The commissioners will now allow time for those who wish to comment to dial in. To call in on your phone, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. When prompted, enter the meeting ID number, which is also provided on the live stream feed using your dial pad. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound sign. Once you've dialed in, you'll be placed in a queue from which a moderator will begin unmuting callers to submit their comment. You will also hear an automatic message to press *9 to raise your hand, indicating that you wish to comment. When it's your turn to speak, the moderator will unmute you and you will hear an automatic message, the host would like you to talk, and to press *6 to speak. You will have 3 minutes to provide your comments. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. And once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and please remember to turn down the live stream volume. The commissioners will take comment for every action item on the agenda. As you listen to the online video stream, the chair will call for public comments as they are now. The process for making a comment will be the same each time. Begin by dialing the telephone number provided on the live stream feed and follow the steps as they've been described. These instructions are also on the website. Thank you.
Chair, are you ready for public comment?
Yes, we are.
Please state and spell your name for the court reporter.
Yes, hello, this is Lori, Lori, Schellenberger, Schellenberger, Redistricting Consultant for Common Cause. And I'm just calling in to reiterate once again, if you could give us a little bit of a sense of where you're going for the rest of the day. I know you're going into closed session. If that means you'll be conducting interviews for the rest of the day, do you have a sense of when you'll be coming back online? It would be very helpful for folks who are watching and engaged in following this, because many of those folks are, busy, and many of them are working on the census and improving the count. So To the extent you can let us know what the schedule is for today, tomorrow, and Friday before you take your break today, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Please state and spell your name for the court reporter.
Hi, my name is Ann Hunter, ANNEHUNTER, and I have the same comment as Lori Schellenberger. How do you have any sense of how long you will be in closed session, or do I need to and other people need to check back incessantly to see where you are? So just a very general time frame would be super, super helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you can press *6, please state and spell your name for the court reporter.
Yes, this is Renee Westa Lusk. Renee is the first name. Last name is W-E-S like in Sam, T like in Tom, A like in Apple, hyphen, Lusk, capital L-U, like an umbrella, S like in Sam, K like in kitten. I just wanted to ask the question of the council, the litigation in California that you said relieved the deadlines if the census data is not distributed in time to meet the original California law's deadline on redistricting. Did that happen in the state legislature? Like, did something pass there to allow that?
To allow the extra time?
Yes.
No, it was a decision by the California Supreme Court. The legislature brought the litigation against the Secretary of State, and the court asked for a response from the 2010 Commission. And after receiving all the information, the California Supreme Court issued the order giving the Commission more time.
Okay. Thank you.
If you will please state and spell your name for the court reporter.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jacqueline Cotto, Jacqueline. Last name is spelled Cotto. I am calling on behalf of Naleo Educational Fund. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to briefly share that we have a collaborative work group joining forces together to offer a letter of recommendations to the Commission on best practices related to community engagement and outreach. And we would love to partner with you and be happy to make presentations on the recommendations set forth on the letter that will be submitted to you. So the work group includes organizations with expertise on community engagement and other civic engagement efforts that will be including information on census and engaging underrepresented communities. And some of the organizations were very active during the last redistricting in 2011. So I wanted to just make a comment on that so that it won't take you off guard. We are really looking to partner with you and move forward with being a really great resource. Thank you so much.
And that's everyone in the queue at this time.
Thanks, Katie. We'll just stand at ease for one more minute in case other folks want to call in.
Madam Chair, it's hard to predict how long item 6 is going to take, but I think it would probably be safe to say the Commission would not be coming back into open session today, if you and Commissioner Fernandez agree with that.
Yes, Commissioner Fernandez?
I think when we initially talked about, I think Commissioner Kennedy and myself, we talked about what we're going to go into closed session. We didn't anticipate it. We anticipated going into closed session in the afternoon and hoping that in the afternoon we could, get ready for tomorrow. And so what I'm wondering is, do we want to maybe move like either agenda item 9 up now before we go to closed session, or do we just go to closed session and then just decide when we're done, and then we go in? Because yes, I agree with Mary, and I don't know how long it's going to take, and I would hate if we have the possibility of coming back after closed session, maybe we move that item now so that whoever's listening can listen now instead of trying to wait until we're done with agenda item number 7. Does that make sense? Am I just okay? Anyway, so that's just my recommendation. We could maybe move agenda item 9 up. I think agenda item 11 might take a little bit longer because I think all of us really wanted to take a lot of time on. But I'm thinking that's one that we could potentially move now. And then agenda item 10, I know that Raul had sent something to the subcommittee. We're going to plan to discuss that on Friday. So anyway, that's just my suggestion, or 2 options, I guess.
Any other thoughts on this? Commissioner Sadwani?
I think Commissioner Sinay had her hand up first.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sinay.
I just had a quick question, and it might have been sent to us, but when are the folks coming to talk about the redistricting software?
Friday. They're
At
coming
what
up
time?
Friday morning.
Friday morning.
Okay. Just so people can have that on their agenda. Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sadwani.
Thank you. I had the same question. It sounds like what people are asking in public comments, is there a specific time, right, for this? Like what time is the person who's going to give this?
After public comment, is it 10 o'clock they're scheduled for?
So if you open with public comment Friday morning, it'll be right after that.
Okay. That'll be approximately 10 o'clock for, I think, folks listening and who wanted more of that information. And then I support fully Commissioner Fernandez's recommendation to move something up, whether it's item number 9 or item number 11, which has been mentioned as well, kind of thinking a little bit more about future agenda items. It doesn't really matter to me which one it is, but if we have that additional time, if we think that the afternoon closed session we only need the afternoon, then I would say let's get that moving now. So I support that.
Commissioner Vasquez?
Could we maybe ask Raul because it also sounds like what people are asking for in public comment, when we get speakers scheduled, can we amend the agenda with their time certain for, so that way, again, at the beginning of each meeting, folks have time certain, Friday at 10, presentation.
Right, and that was the nature of the clarification question that I was asking Marion precisely. I had left the space on the agenda for that, and that's why.
Commissioner Fernandez?
Yes, Raul, I think Commissioner Vasquez, what she was asking is, now we know it's going to be on Friday at 10. So could we amend the agenda now and show that it's going to be on Friday at 10? That way, if anyone else that's interested knows what time that's going to be discussed. I don't think that's an issue for what Marion said, because it's already an agenda item. We're just adding a specific date and time.
Are you requesting that it be reposted with that change, or just that it be announced with that change?
Posted. Is that
Yeah.
Posted, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would like it reposted.
That would be great.
Are you able to do that?
It won't happen immediately.
That's okay. We already said it, so we already said it. They're aware of it, but for those that aren't viewing right now, it'll be good information for them.
And if I may, the asterisk on that is that presupposes that any discussion that we end with on Thursday, there's no carryover into Friday morning. And so that's a caveat there. So saying that it's going to happen at 10 precisely is kind of a misnomer.
Well, at least we know it's going to happen on Friday. That's
Friday
that's
morning,
a good
yes.
starting point.
I mean, as far as, yes.
Yeah, so it's better than not knowing if it's going to be Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So it's a good starting point for people that are interested in that specific agenda item.
Commissioner Sidwani?
Thanks. Thoughts? One, I mean, the other piece that we haven't discussed, I mean, I hope I'm not like saying anything that's shouldn't be public knowledge. I think it all should, but I mean, our intention then is to be in closed session Wednesday afternoon and all day Thursday. I don't think that is written anywhere on the meeting agenda. But I think that those kinds of things, like, you know, folks who are trying to listen in from around the state probably just know tomorrow we're not intending to have an open session, that we have all of those interviews lined up and stuff scheduled. And then the other piece, if it takes that long to post to the internet, perhaps, I don't know how you all, I'm happy to like tweet out like that we're expecting folks at 10 a.m. I certainly, that's not the whole list of everybody that we have there, but I think we've heard this comment several times from folks that they want more transparency in terms of our agenda. I know it's difficult because we have to, you know, we're trying to put so many things together, but I think that we have to find solutions for this. We want an open and transparent process.
Commissioner Lamont?
I'd like to hear from commissioners that have recommendations on solving this. I feel like a lot of people are sort of complaining, but think about your concern and offer a solution, because there's a lot of variables that prevent this. And I think to frame it in a transparency context is a little off-putting to me, because in no way is this about us not wanting to be transparent. I think we have to be very careful about us sitting here saying that, you know, people want transparency as if we aren't being transparent. I think we're trying to work out details on how to make this happen with all the variables that we have to consider. So I think we need to talk to staff, and I don't know how this happens, whether it happens with the subcommittee who is putting together the agenda to understand all the mechanisms by which we can adjust it. We can, because to have, I think, these conversations with 14 people, I don't know if it's really a good use of time, in my opinion. I think that we establish subcommittees for a reason. So we raise these concerns. Who's going to do the solutions? Because I don't hear that. I just hear, you know, this is wrong and that's wrong, and we need to do this, and how we get it done. I guess I like to jump to that discussion. How do we get it done? And who has the answers to the how? I don't know if that's Marion and Raul or someone who has done this before, but I really would love to hear more of that.
I saw Marion's hand and then Commissioner Anderson and Vasquez.
Thank you. Part of it, a lot of it is just staff limitations. Raul and I are just part-time employees, and we're all you've got right now. And when you're having a meeting, we have to be here. So to ask us to do things now that should happen right away just can't happen. So if you would understand that, it will improve as you hire more staff.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kennedy.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kennedy.
I didn't know whether there was anyone else in line before me.
Vasquez and Anderson, are you okay with giving Commissioner Kennedy some space to talk?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kennedy, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record on this, but the State Auditor's Office is obligated to provide us the support that we need until we are fully functional. And, you know, if we need more support now, then the State Auditor's Office should provide us more support now. We can't be hobbled by these limitations in the meantime. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson, and then Vasquez, and then Lamont.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy and Commissioner Lamont. I really appreciate those comments because it is sort of a frustrating process. I would like to, Raul, sort of facilitate this conversation a little bit. I was talking to Raul about how do we do these things, and it turns out that because of the way it's posted, there's a delay. It isn't just as simple as I'm going, like we're used to, what the general public is used to, is I want to change this document. I change it, and then I replace the one that's on the website. It isn't that simple, and that's the basic issue that we're dealing with here. Raul, am I just summing it up really quickly and condensed exactly what's going on?
In part, Commissioner Anderson, to the group, that conversation was in regards to the posting of the recruitments, and those recruitments connect to actual state processes. And so making a change to one of those, that's why it took so long to establish it, and that's why it takes so long to make any kind of change, because there's a whole lot of back-end processes that are attached to it. In regards to just focusing on the agenda and members of the public wanting to know exactly when something will occur, that's very difficult unless you set everything by a timetable and then you limit the discussion and put the timetable first. So while that can be done, there's a choice to be made on, like I say, stopping the discussions. Otherwise, what you have is a general time. On the other side with that is, as a commission, if you choose to make changes and take an agenda item in a different order, like has been suggested now, instead of going into closed session immediately, bring some things up to the front and put the closed session after that, that's a choice that you have. Can it confuse the public? Yes, but that's also your choice in terms of how you order your meeting. You can only announce things in real time up to a certain point. You can make accommodations up to a certain point. There's those give and takes. But unless you limit your discussion and go on a timetable, people will always be asking you, so when exactly is that going to occur? So I can post something that says it's going to occur at 10 o'clock on Friday. But if something happens Thursday and you need to do additional work with that Friday morning, it's going to impact that. That's just the nature of the work. And so I kind of agree with Commissioner Lamont. I don't think we're trying to not be transparent. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is managing the discussion, scheduling how you approach things, and as you're doing, to let the public know each step of the way, here's what we're doing today. This is our intent. And carrying out that intent as honestly as you can, knowing that things can change. Anyway, my 2 cents.
No, thank you very much, Rule. What I was actually specific is going more to the specifics of the details of how, and in terms of our just general information, in terms of what we put down, what we want to summarize, and how we'd like to make modifications on the agenda, then there's a time frame in which modifying that and updating it onto the website. There's a bit of a delay there, and I think that's what we're trying to address, just trying to shorten that up. And I totally agree with Commissioner Lamont. It's not as though we're trying to prevent that from happening. We just want to facilitate that to happen. And I'll be the first to nominate, if we need a subcommittee, I will lead that subcommittee. So I'm going to put that out there if I need to make a motion to do that, and whatever that would take, whether it be get someone from the state auditors to do this. I think that's what Commissioner Kennedy and what we're sort of indicating we'd like to go to, if that's an action item that we should do.
Commissioner Vasquez. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, so I'm asking for it, other commissioners, or specifically Raul, or do you think that needs to move to that level?
So one of your agenda topics, item number 10, is looking at contracts and procurement. I'm going to skip ahead real quick not to talk about that, but to mention, one of the contracts is to have an interim IT person.
Okay. Great. That's all we need to hear.
Yes.
And yes, we're going to talk about that
Yes.
in item number 11. Item number 10.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Vasquez, Lamons, and then Kennedy? Maybe?
So to reiterate my specific request, it may be, understanding it may be a moot point, given that there is quite a bit of lag in the IT department. To the extent that we know a general time that things are scheduled, can we update today's agenda to reflect those time approximate, maybe not time certain, but time approximate, and have those uploaded as soon as you are able, Raul, given everything that you're balancing. And then in the future, for future agendas, as presenters get scheduled, if we can take that into consideration, whether we need to update agendas before the meeting starts.
Yes.
Commissioner Lamont?
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to support Commissioner Anderson and say, if we want to establish a troubleshooting subcommittee, I'd be more than happy to join her on it, where we can actually, there's a lot of things that are going to come up, and we talk about the meetings going long, etc. Part of the reason is we spend a lot of time on things like this, which is fine. It's not that these things shouldn't get addressed, but I think we need to have a better mechanism. I also think patience is important. We don't have our staff. That's why we set up these interviews. We're trying to get there. I think that there's also a little bit of a differential between the first 8's experience and the additional 6's experience. Last session was you guys' first meeting. And so you're kind of jumped into this and probably are having a very different, well, you are having a very different experience than we have in terms of, you know, navigating each other's personalities, being accustomed to how the process has kind of worked so far, even though it's bumpy and cumbersome, kind of waiting it out. So I get that today as a reaction to your experience from the last meeting, and I respect that, and I am sensitive to that. I think in order for us to move these foundational things that we need to get in place, we'll be sailing soon much more smoothly, but it's going to be a little rocky for these first few meetings until we get our staff in place and other things. And if there is, like for example, the troubleshooting committee can reach out to the state auditor's office and pursue Commissioner Kennedy's recommendations so that everything isn't just dumped on the staff. That's something that I'm absolutely prepared to do, or any other things that we need to navigate. But I do want to point out that we only have 2 staff people right now, and our first order of business is to get staffed up so that we can move forward. So let's just keep a little laundry list of all of our upset and the things that we don't like and what's not working, and we'll start to tick away at that list of getting it fixed. So I want the public to know that we've stated from the very, very beginning how important public comment is to us. And I think everything that has really been raised, we've tried to adjust, making sure we have public comment at the beginning. So we're listening, we're committed, and transparency is at the forefront of what we're doing. And I just want to caution that we don't suggest anything other than that, because I haven't experienced with any of you anything other than that. So that's all I'm going to say on that this morning.
Commissioner Kennedy and Parnashari?
The only thing that I would add to this at this point is we've known for a while that tomorrow was going to be fully occupied with interviews. So, you know, the public can be aware of that, and you know, how we reflect that on agendas in the future is something that we can troubleshoot. Thank you.
Commissioner Parnashari, did you have your hand up? And then Sine?
Actually, I was just scratching my head, but since you called on me, I'll I think part of the challenge we're having here is that we haven't put together a set of ground rules how we're going to manage our meetings. You know, we just haven't done that. We haven't had time to do it. It seems like, you know, hiring and staffing up is you know, it's something we need to do and something we need to get going on, and obviously we're doing that. I'm looking at the agenda for the next meeting, and maybe there's a little room in agenda item 14 for doing that, but, you know, I think maybe at least in the one of the subsequent meetings, we need to make some space to have those kinds of conversations.
Commissioner Sinai?
I don't think you meant it this way, Commissioner Lamons, but you have pushed a few buttons today. And I think we all need to be a little careful. I have not felt a division, and I thought I was very happy to be part of the 14. I never felt a separation between the 6 and the 8. And you brought it up a couple of times last meeting as well, and I would like us, you also were the one who said, hey, let's just jump into this and not have the selected and the lucky, you know, and we haven't used those names. So I would like us not to bring it up since we have worked well together. We do have different ways of working, and I think it was unfair. Commissioner Sadwani did give a solution by saying, hey, I'll tweet it out if that's helpful. I can tweet it out as well. Solutions had been put out there, and we were told we were complaining. And part of the reason that the first group got a lot of pressure was because it wasn't as diverse and reflective of the whole community. And so we are going to think differently, and that's what we're supposed to. We're all supposed to be a little different. I don't think you mean to press buttons, but I'd like us all to try to build each other up and build on each other's strengths. I know your strength is to move us forward as quickly as possible, and I do turn to you and I use you as I think before I speak and say, how much will Commissioner Lamons roll his eyes? As a joke, I'm not saying it harshly. Sorry if it came out harsh, but I just want us all to just be a little kinder to each other, because I think that is what we're, you know, when we use the word transparency, that might mean something different for those of us who are more grounded in the community, and for some community people, knowing their time is precious, and so knowing what time things are is being transparent for them. Though we're being very transparent, we're in a fishbowl right now. So I apologize, but I just want to make sure that we're all a little kinder to each other as we move forward.
Commissioner Vasquez?
Yeah, I think if I can offer a language adjustment, I think when I've heard people say transparency, I think we're really talking about access. Transparency, I think, has some negative connotations. Well, we're trying to make this more accessible, and I think that is what this conversation is about. So maybe we need an accessibility committee, which is this troubleshooting, right? Like we'll do things and we'll realize, oh, this wasn't as accessible as we had intended it to be. So there's nothing nefarious, which I think transparency, especially when we're talking about government, has particular connotations. Well, access, we are trying to provide greater access. So accessibility.
All right, so hearing the conversation, what I would propose for your consideration is that we use the time we have now until 11:20 when we hit our required break to start agenda item number 9 and work through that agenda item. Then we will take our break at 11:05, and we return at 11:20, so we have 3 minutes. So after our break, when we come back at 11:20, we start agenda item number 9. We complete that agenda item, hopefully before lunch. If we need to go on after lunch, we will continue the conversation after lunch. the idea I have is after that, we will jump into closed session, and we will be in closed session until Friday morning. Friday morning, we will return to open session. We will present the summary of what occurred during closed session, and then move along the remaining items of the agenda. How does that sound to everyone? Do I see any objections? Marion, Raul, do you all have any thoughts on that?
That's perfect.
Very
Okay.
succinctly stated. Thank you, Chair Ahmad.
I'm sorry, there's no time stamps associated with anything, but that's our general idea. So right now it's 11:03. Let's take a 15-minute break and we can return at 11:17. And then we will start with agenda item number 9. Welcome back from break. We will be jumping into item number 9, which is the subcommittee updates. So going down the list, action on census, Commissioner Sadwani and Toledo.
I can go. So thank you to all the commissioners who contributed their edits and sent us their edits via email or in person at the last meeting. We used those edits to finalize the letters. The letters that were then signed and sent out. And currently we're just monitoring the litigation, and there's no recommendation at this time. I don't know if Commissioner Sadwani has any additional updates.
Yeah, I would just add that there have been new bills sent out, introduced. Marion had mentioned those. They are bipartisan bills. In the Senate, it's Democrat Brian Schatz from Hawaii and Senator Lisa Murkowski from Republican from Alaska. On the House side, it's Representative Don Young, a Republican from Alaska. Also, and Ruben Gallego, a Democrat from Arizona. Again, it's just pushing for, the extension to the census figures. It would require the census to continue its work through October and push that deadline for the data to come to the states to August 2021. I don't have a strong recommendation there. Certainly we could, do another letter specific to these bills if we wanted to. I would love to urge them to move that legislation forward. It's basically the same kind of thing as what we had seen before, but this time a bipartisan approach. Certainly Senator Murkowski has been in the news of late, so I don't know if this is like a top priority for her or not. I have no sense of that.
I guess one final comment would just be that once we have a communications director, that maybe publicizing the letters either through our position, the position stated in the letters, may be a way to just to communicate with the public our support for our position and get the word out there a little bit more, and including potentially these types of legislation. So just having that additional staff capacity would certainly help in communicating these types of positions in the future.
Have any questions or comments from other commissioners on action on census subcommittee? Yes, Commissioner Sine.
I think once we're able to make the letters public, which I understand we're getting there, hopefully that our community partners, those who want to partner with us, and I do consider them a community partners, can share our perspective. And they have more of an infrastructure than we do right now. But I was shocked in talking to someone this week that they just said that even if the census moves forward, that there's going to be so much litigation that we won't have any data. That was a lot more bleak than I had heard the information in the, heard everyone talking to us, who had talked to us. So that just this whole idea that the litigation may stop everything was kind of a shock. So if anyone has any updates or thoughts on that.
Commissioner Fornashari?
So the assertion was that litigation is going to stop the census data from being released? Do they have any crystal ball that suggests when or how long, or just indefinitely?
The sense that this was our conversation with Ben at NCLS, and he had said that a lot of people in the world of census is really feeling that the litigation will prevent the data from coming out, because the litigation will be around the quality of the data.
Marion, I saw your hand up.
I was just going to suggest to the subcommittee, I think the action at the last meeting was to authorize you to send letters on pending legislation. I don't think you need new authority to go ahead and send it on the 2 new bipartisan bills if you choose to do so.
Thank you, that's helpful. I mean, is there a consensus amongst the commission that that is something we want to move forward? Any objections?
Commissioner Anderson?
Particularly, I would recommend that we do go ahead because it is consistent with our mission, and particularly the bipartisan. That is completely what our commission is about. It shouldn't be a partisan item. We should all have the correct information equally, and that's what we're all about. So I would certainly propose that we could, that you do go ahead and draft up the letters. The only thing is, and I don't mean it as a stop, but could the letter be sent? I don't know if that's within the purview of our procedure. Not that we would say, okay, everyone has to approve it before it goes. It's just if you have a serious objection or something before it goes. But I would believe it would be very similar. So that was what my 2 cents.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Madam Chair, I have a question for council, and this may actually require some research, so I'm not necessarily expecting an immediate answer. I know that in the past, cases have gone all the way to the Supreme Court where one state is suing another state over apportionment. And what happens if there is a dispute over the apportionment? Do we go ahead and draw maps on the basis of the initial apportionment, and then if California were to be, for example, sued by Texas in the Supreme Court over a disputed seat and Texas eventually prevailed, we would then have to redraw the congressional maps? Thank you.
I think that is correct. And hopefully that litigation would be on a fast track so that you could take the decision into account when you're drawing your lines the first time around. But if, for instance, California were to lose a congressional seat, those maps would have to be redrawn.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at this time related to this particular subcommittee? Yes, Commissioner Fernandez.
I don't know if, I just reread the letter. Well, I don't know what actually went out, but I reread the letter, the draft letter from last time. And it's very well written. And I don't know if we want to add a little bit more. You know, we talk about COVID, but then especially in California and some of the other states, those communities that have been displaced because of the fires. So now again, there's an added obstacle to having reliable numbers. So I don't know if that's something that we want to consider.
I think that's a great idea, and I'd be happy to add language to that effect.
I have a question. question. Maybe this question is for Raul or the subcommittee. There were several iterations of the draft addressed to various people. Do we have a clear sense of which letters actually went out and which ones we did not send out?
So there were a lot of iterations, and we depended on the subcommittee to direct which ones were the final ones, which, from my perspective, they were very well able to do so, and those were the ones that were then printed and sent to the chair for signature. Because I think all the information was coming into them, and not to Marion and I. They were coming into them directly.
I'm sorry, maybe I should clarify. So who did we send the letters to? There were several people. We had senators on the list. We had Census Bureau staff. If we have that information, if you need time to look that up, that's fine too. Commissioner Cornishari, and then Kennedy, and then Turner.
Just a comment. I'm really quite comfortable with the job that the subcommittee did in drafting those letters and putting them together, and I'm completely comfortable with them, making whatever minor tweaks they feel they need to make to a draft to send it in support of these bipartisan bills.
Commissioner Kennedy, and then Turner.
Could I just jump in quickly? What I actually meant to say is just more in terms of, can we just get a copy essentially, so we know the final thing that went out. That was more, rather than, I didn't mean that we need to review it, because I agree with Commissioner Fornaciari.
That was my question too, Anderson. Commissioner Kennedy, and then Turner.
I have nothing further at this point, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And I'll send those out to the group today.
Okay, Madam Chair, I was just going to answer your question. The letters went to Senator Kamala Harris, Wilbur Ross, Representative Carolyn Maloney, and Senator Ron Johnson.
Thank you.
And Director Dillingham.
So did I miss one? Thank you.
Do we have any other questions, comments, concerns for action on Census Subcommittee? No? Okay. Commissioner Lamont.
I guess I have more of a process question with regard to updates, particularly since we've discussed subcommittee updates being a standing part of our agendas moving forward, at least for the time being. So the questions that were asked with regard to the final letter, whom it went to, et cetera, I guess my question is, there seemed to be like some lack of clarity between who would report that. So I guess my expectation would be that the subcommittee would report that, like they would have the end-to-end understanding of everything that has gone down, or they instruct staff to report that when raised, but it just seemed to be confusion about who knew what. So I'm just kind of putting that out there for subcommittees in general, that my thought is, or my expectation would be that the subcommittees who take on whatever particular responsibility that they take on, that they're reporting back during this process, in the end, what happened, outcomes, et cetera, recommendations, so on and so forth.
Any additional questions, comments at this time? Seeing none, we can move on to item B, 9B, which is the hiring of the executive director. So I will hand the floor over to Commissioners Fernandez and Kennedy to give the update regarding that item.
Well, actually, the update on that is we'll be dealing with that the rest of today, and then also tomorrow, and hopefully the hopeful outcome is that we'll have a chosen candidate.
Do we have any questions or comments for Commissioners Fernandez and Kennedy at this time?
There is one matter that I think should be discussed in open session, which has to do with some of the commissioners not being able to be there for the full time tomorrow, and how the commission wants to deal with that issue.
So in terms of, Marion, if I'm understanding you correctly, is there's a possibility that all commissioners can't be there for every interview. So they might be there for some of the interviews. And my suggestion for that would be that they obviously give feedback for the interviews that they were present for, and then rely on the rest of the commissioners in terms of feedback for those interviews that were not present.
And I think you expressed one other concern, that if they miss an interview, they miss the entire interview. They not come in during the middle of an interview.
Right, and I was thinking more of, it could be distracting somewhat, and I'm not sure how, especially that we're doing it could be distracting to the candidate, and I would hate for them to be distracted from all of a sudden there's somebody else in there. I'm not sure. I have no idea what this is going to look like tomorrow, and it may not be distracting. So I kind of have to wait and see, or we have to wait and see.
Commissioner Kennedy?
I have nothing to add at this point. Thank you.
Commissioner Lamont and then Sinai?
I just want to confirm we'll have a quorum for each of the interviews. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second thing would be that I would support not joining in the middle. I think that is disruptive to a candidate to have a new party just join the interview process. So my recommendation would be that if a commissioner is not present for that interview, that they sit that particular interview out. And again, following Commissioner Fernandez's other recommendations, I support those as well.
We could ask Raul to let the commissioners who are absent know when the next interview starts, so then they may join at that time. He's not going to be participating in the interviews. So
Someone would have to tell me, but I'd be
Right.
more than happy to do that.
well, it would be when the one interviewee leaves, then we'll know it's over.
Well, but doesn't the group need time to collect their notes? Did
Right.
you want them to come in after that?
Well, that would give them time to.
Once you notify me, I'd be happy to do so.
Commissioner Sinai, Sadwani, and then Akutagawa.
I'm one of the ones that won't be able to be at, I have a less than a 1 hour facilitation I need to do tomorrow, and I had kind of scheduled it thinking that I would miss the end of one interview and could jump in on the other, so I wouldn't miss any. I'm fine. I just want clarification if I shouldn't even be on the one I'm going to have to jump off of, because I will be, as I said, it's about half an hour, 45 minutes. And second of all, if we keep our video off, we can still hear the interview. And so I want that to be okay, because I think it's important for us to hear the interview. I also think it's important then maybe today when we do the questions to also share. I mean, I have some concerns and I have some positives and stuff that I want to hear about certain candidates, and unless those get answered, I don't think I can make a decision.
Commissioner Sadwani, Akutagawa, and then Turner.
Yeah, thank you. My question was the same, actually. I have an hour where I have to step away. Would it be okay to start the interview, at least for those first 15 minutes, and then step away? Or would folks feel like that is also distracting?
Commissioner Akutagawa, and then Turner, and then I think we should discuss the questions on the floor.
Yeah, I have a similar, I have the same questions as Commissioner Sine and Sadwani. I have to step away for a bit today and then for a very short time tomorrow. I was intending to just leave my connection up, but turn my video off. And if it's preferable, I can just keep my video off for the entirety of an interview where I know I'm going to have to leave midway through, and then another interview where I'm going to have to join partway through. I'm have to just leave the video off so it's not distracting, but I'd like to be able to listen.
Just for information, for those of you who aren't sitting here, all of you appear on a Brady Bunch type screen, so the candidate will be able to see people who come on and off of videos. But it's still your decision about how you want to handle whether that's going to be your procedure or not.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I personally think that it is a good example of what will happen in the field on a regular basis. I don't think that it is such a negative to have candidates know upfront that there will be commissioners that have other engagements that will come or go. I think the commissioners where it could get disruptive, if indeed you're not going to be on for the full interview or have an opportunity to perhaps hear a response to a question, maybe you shouldn't necessarily ask questions, but to come and go and have different people, I'm not concerned about that. Particularly for what we're asking our executive director to be able to do and accomplish with a lot of different variables as they move forward, number one. The other thing is I guess I wanted to respond to, is that I'm hopeful not just for this situation, but for anything going forward. For any time period that I'm not going to be a participant, I do want to be able to rely and trust on the other 13 that's sitting on this commission and not hold up any forward movement because I didn't choose or could not personally be involved. So I'm making that comment specifically, Commissioner Sinai, you mentioned, I like to be involved in a lot too, so that's a hard thing to release, but I also think it's a trust issue for the other commissioners, and we don't want to hold proceedings because we've missed time and now we can't necessarily move forward. This is where trust of the other commissioners, I think, will come in.
Commissioner Fornashari and then Kennedy.
I just want to say, I agree with that. If we give the candidates a heads up at the beginning, commissioners may be coming and going. I think we have to be able to accommodate that. We have to expect our executive director to be able to, deal with minor distractions like that.
Commissioner Kennedy and then Anderson.
Madam Chair, my only concern with the number of people indicating that they may have to be out at some point is Commissioner Lamonz's question from earlier. Are we certain that we are going to have a quorum at all times? Because we have to make decisions on personnel matters through our supermajority rules. Thank you.
As far as I know, that's only the 3 that are absent will not pose a problem. If there are others of you who are not going to be here for the entire day, if you would let us know, we can ensure that we do what's necessary.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, I would like to say, since I was the person who was actually attending in person all the first 8 group, the idea, and it's hard not being in the room to see what it would look like in terms of it being distracting. It's basically a television screen that you're looking at. And I think there will be, I believe it's 3 commissioners in attendance, as well as Miriam, and then a few reporters, things around. And the person being there, then to look at a small screen, if someone changes or something, I really don't think that's a distraction, other than, which Commissioner Turner, Commissioner Fornashari mentioned, that's something they should definitely be able to handle, given the position that we're requesting them to do. So I really don't see, I know it's kind of a respect thing about coming in and out of even during the middle of an interview. And if it was in person, that's a completely different thing. No, I don't think, that is distracting. In and out on a little tiny screen, particularly when there's a group, because what you don't understand is sometimes just on the screen itself, like we see it, how it rearranges at times, even when it isn't like someone's just going off, at times it'll just sort of rearrange. That's what it would really look like. And it's far away from you. You can see it's far away from you. So I really don't think that's a distraction. And I think it would be actually helpful, even if the people would just like to listen in, to get as much information to as many of the commissioners as possible. So I know we've sort of said, well, we really shouldn't be listening in, but I do agree with the questions. Maybe if you're not there, then maybe don't ask questions. But I just can't see that as a problem, having been in the room.
Just one clarification about the process. There will be no court reporter. I'll be taking minutes, and that will be it.
Okay. So, but there still will be technical in the room,
videographers, right?
Right.
But
Commissioner Yee?
So they can broadcast it to everybody, the webinar.
Could we hear a little bit more about how the actual questioning we expect to proceed with that? I mean, is the subcommittee going to put questions to the candidates, and then other commissioners perhaps add additional questions? Is that what we're thinking, or what?
Marion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an item for discussion during closed session?
Correct.
So we will get to that soon, Commissioner Yee. Any other questions? Commissioner Fernandez.
My only other comment is if we do, if those commissioners that won't be there for the whole time and, they mute, which is fine. I just want to remind everyone that it is closed session. So if someone else is in the room, or maybe wear headphones because no one else is supposed to hear what's going on during the interview. So that would be my only concern if we move forward that way.
Commissioner Yee.
So for those commissioners who will be stepping away at times, I mean, just let us know if there are things that you absolutely want and need to have asked, and we'll try to do our best to do so. Yeah.
I would like to bring back to the group for discussion, just because I didn't get a sense of clarity on how we are going to proceed. So are those commissioners who will be absent for a portion of an interview, whether it be at the beginning or the end of an interview, are they sitting out for the whole interview? Are they going to come in at some point and remain silent? Or are they going to jump back in as if they were there the whole interview? I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that piece. Commissioner Turner?
Yeah, my hope is that they will be allowed to come in and out to be able to hear as much as possible. And I'm also hoping that they will not ask questions, because often they'll ask a question that could have already been visited while they were gone. And so I love what Commissioner Yee said, if as we're in closed session, if there are specifics that need to be asked, et cetera, we can have that discussion at that time and ensure that we cover all ground to make everyone comfortable. So I guess my view of what I'm hoping would happen is that commissioners should be able to hear as much as they can for the time period that they are. And we will curate the space in a way that says those asking the questions will be those that are able to be there for the full time and hear responses.
Yes, Commissioner Lamont.
I think there was one more point on that, which was their participation in the post-interview discussion after each candidate. And my thought would be, if they're in and out, then they should participate based on what they heard, because that would be the whole point, right? So I just wanted to make sure that that piece of the consideration was also covered in whatever decision we end up with.
Commissioner Fernandez.
So I think it sounds like what we want to do is move forward. They can come in and out, but they'll remain silent and not ask questions, but then they will be involved in the discussion, obviously. So I think that's what was majority, right? Thumbs up? Okay.
Can I get a thumbs up if we're all okay with that? Okay, I'm assuming Commissioner Kennedy, you have your thumbs up.
Yes, I do.
All right. Any remaining questions or thoughts on 9B? Seeing none, let's move on to 9C, hiring of chief counsel. Commissioners Anderson and Toledo. Do you have any updates for us?
Yes, we do. Basically, we got together and had a quick meeting. We ended up writing basically a posting, which is now on, it's called the dailyjournal.com. It is essentially the legal magazine that's used throughout California. It's actually posted they actually have 14 different essentially newspapers, and it's online as well. If you go to dailyjournal.com, you will see that posting, and it refers to, we actually got I can read that if you'd like. It's quite short, and then it refers to the job bulletin, which is still on the We Draw the Lines, and then it has for inquiries, which is how they actually apply. It's called Voters First Act but it's a clcd.ca.gov. That way, it all funnels to the same mechanism, and they all come in looking the same in terms of their interview documents. That got posted. I believe it was actually just yesterday. And it will be, the way they do this, it runs for a certain period of time. It will also include, on Fridays, they do a very large, sort of a special where they highlight different job opportunities. And this is one that will be highlighted. So that went in, and it is sort of running its course, and that's where we are. But what I would like to do at this time, which is why I think it's very important that this is in the general meeting here, is we'd like to get any of our community partners out there who are listening to please spread the word. For the details of this, it's dailyjournal.com. They probably are, since many of those groups actually have redistricting personnel, they're very familiar with this publication. And it essentially refers everyone to how to do, basically how to take it from there. So if we could just get our community partners who are listening to please help us post this everywhere, that would be great. So Pedro, did you want to say additional?
I just wanted to add that any commissioner who wants to forward on the advertisement, they're more than happy. You're more than able to, on social media or otherwise, forward the announcement to your networks. And we did reach out to Professor Levitt and just ask them to, and other speakers to ask them to publicize the announcement, as we are doing all of our community partners, just to get the message out there and to try to get a qualified pool, a larger qualified pool of candidates.
So,
do you have any additional points to add to your update before I move to questions or comments from the group?
No, just questions or?
Okay. So questions or comments from the group. Commissioner Fornashari.
Did the announcement get sent out to the mailing list that we have?
That will occur today.
Okay.
Commissioner Fernandez.
I know I could find out by just going on our website, but when's the final filing date for the new advertisement?
For both, it'll be September 30.
So it just went out to our mailing list today, and it's due September 30th, Raul, is that right?
It didn't just go out to the mailing list. It went out on the newspaper advertisement. It's been on the state website. Actually, I heard from an organization in New York who's interested in wanting to participate in the recruitment. So it's gone out fairly widely. So with the MailChimp, I'm still learning that. So I learned it last week, and so I should have one out today while you're in closed session.
Any other questions or comments for hiring the chief counsel? Commissioner Sinai, I'm not sure if I saw your hand go up and then down. Okay. Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to check with Raul. I had submitted a number of other options for posting these job applications: California Association of Counties, California Association of Clerks and Election Officials, electionline.org, and just wanted to know if those went out to them or if I'll need to send them out to them.
So what I did with those is I forwarded those to the subcommittees, who then made the decisions regarding where things would be posted, where the advertisements would go.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Commissioner Kennedy, it was a little hard, didn't have the actual notes on that quite as well, so if you could go ahead and forward that, we'd appreciate it. Because unless Pedro is, I did not actually go ahead and send that to those groups because I didn't have the details. So unless Pedro did.
I didn't forward it to those groups. Happy to do so, or if you have connection with those groups, we're happy to go down the list as well.
And actually, I thought a lot of those suggestions were for the communications director and not for the chief counsel.
No, there were some that were specific to chief counsel, but then others that were for any and all of the postings.
So, Commissioner Kennedy, could you, whatever's more efficient, if the ones for the council, if you could either take care of that yourself or let one of us know which particular ones those were, that'd be great. So whichever.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and send them out once I can get to the announcement itself.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for Marion and Raul. So at this point, since we are publicizing very widely the hiring of a chief counsel, we as a commission can go into our own independent networks as well to advertise this position, correct?
Yes, it's a public announcement.
So just in case folks have a network that you would want to share that information with.
The wider the better.
And I sent
Yes.
I sent the commissioners a copy of the ad this morning, so everybody should have gotten that.
Commissioner Lamont?
I have a process question. I understand that with the subcommittees, it's the communication between only two commissioners. And so I want to be clear that I understand to what degree other commissioners can communicate with the subcommittee directly versus processing communication with the subcommittee through staff.
We would like it to come through staff, and then we will forward it so that we're kept in the loop, so to speak.
And so that means that, let's say, for example, that I had some resources that I wanted this particular announcement to go to. I would send them to staff with my desire for them to be submitted to the subcommittee for consideration for distribution. And then, kind of walk that through for me.
Yes, that's how it should work.
And then the subcommittee would, of course. Now, what if they had questions about what I've submitted?
They could come to you directly with those questions.
They could come directly to me with those questions?
Right.
Now, would I respond to those questions to them directly, or would I send my response through staff to them?
How about a
Actually-
compromise and you send it to staff and the subcommittee? I don't
Okay.
want to impose an extra lag time in there. I just want to be sure that we're kept informed.
Mary,
Okay.
could I, for, again, just clarification, because this would apply to all the different subcommittees. Is it okay to send it to, like, say, Commissioner Lamont wants to send something about the council? Is it okay to essentially send one email copying the staff and the subcommittee?
Yes, that would be okay.
Clarification on that. Would it be more appropriate to send it to staff and copy the subcommittee, or the other way around?
Your preference, there's no magic rule on that.
Okay. And then, Madam Chair, I have one more subcommittee, not the ones listed, question for when it's appropriate during this agenda item.
Yes, Commissioner Servani.
On the same point, I think for the census subcommittee, at what point does it then become a serial meeting? So if another commissioner is emailing the two members of a subcommittee and the staff, the subcommittee cannot respond, is that correct?
You can respond as long as you don't get to be a quorum. So if it's just two of you to one of the commissioners, there's no problem with that. But then that should not be distributed to everybody on the commission.
So, sorry, here, I think this will clarify it. Say, like, specifically on your letters, say if I have comments and I send them to the staff and to both you and Commissioner Toledo, and then you might say, yeah, we didn't like it, clarify, get it all cleaned up, and then send that back to me. But then I never see anything that goes, say, from Commissioner Fernandez, does the same. And so not until the document is completed, and then you would be showing it to everybody, that's the time when everyone hears about it. And
Correct.
Is that correct? So
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I feel like we had a situation in which another commissioner had emailed us. I can go back and check my emails, but the response was, be careful, this is becoming a serial meeting. So I appreciate that clarification, and I'll
And
go
the
back
other
and-
option, if you wish something you consider important enough to have everybody involved, is to do it during a noticed meeting.
Right, of course.
Commissioner Akutagawa and Kennedy.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So I think I heard that if we wanted to share something with the entire commission, the staff, so that you're kept in the loop versus just sending something to staff to then redistribute to the commission?
Yes, if it's to the entire commission, because that will do is a warning on there not to discuss it with each other, but just to reply to the staff.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Nothing at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions, comments on hiring of the chief counsel? Seeing none, next subcommittee is the hiring of communications director. Commissioners Taylor and Commissioner Vasquez, do you all have an update for us?
Sure. So we have made the edits per our discussion from our last meeting to the communications director recruitment posting. We then, Raul has been doing the work to get that advertised, get that reposted across several, hopefully wider spread distribution lists. So specifically, it went out in the Nooner and the Capital Morning Report. And those have a pretty wide circulation in Sacramento and political government circles. So hoping to get wide distribution there. And then the website idealist.org, which has wide circulation around community groups and nonprofits. So hopefully, especially because the discussion around the communications director was really centered around their ability to support and even lead outreach to several diverse communities and ethnic communities, hoping that really wide net gets us some high quality candidates, in addition to the candidates that we had gotten sort of through the first wave. So we did commit to keeping folks in the pool who have already applied via the first process. I don't believe that we heard back from anybody around withdrawing their application. We did also offer the option of amending their materials based on the new posting if they so wish. So hopefully, like I said, we are on track to growing our pool for the communications director position. Folks have any?
Commissioner Taylor, do you have anything to add?
No. Commissioner Vasquez said it very well and succinctly. I also encourage us to use your channels and our partners to reach out. Our goal is to have this done fairly shortly within the 2 weeks that we agreed upon, so that we can begin to filter the applications and we can move on to the next phase.
Are there any questions or comments from the group regarding the hiring of communications director? No questions? Commissioner Sadwani.
Very quick, is it possible for someone to send just the link of where we can find it so we can send it out? I know several different places we mentioned.
I've got it open. Is it okay for me to send it?
Yes.
Or not? Okay, I'll send it out right now.
All right, Commissioner Kennedy, just checking in with you. Do you have any thoughts or questions on this particular subcommittee or for this subcommittee?
I'm looking at the job posting, and it has a final filing date of Friday. Was that intended, or was this to be 30 September as well?
You're talking about the one on the state website. I contacted them yesterday because they changed the date on it and said, and I have directed them to fix that.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that update. Moving on to the Finance Subcommittee. Commissioners Fornashari and Fernandez, you have the floor.
Let's see. I don't think we have a whole lot to report at this point. We want to get with Raul and look at the budget. Raul's been super busy with other stuff. Hopefully he's gonna, he'll come to us with I think at the next meeting with some staff, interim temporary staff. A couple things though, updates that I want to give that I did. One question was about whether the computers we have will run ArcGIS. And the answer is no. And so there's not enough memory on the hard drives to download the software. Plus, I'm pretty sure that the processing horsepower is not. It might run, but it won't be adequate. I mean, no big rush on that. It's something we need to think about. The other thing that I didn't get a chance to talk to Raul about that I thought about. I mean, I think part of the problem some of the folks might be having is with these cheap webcams that we have, and I'm just wondering if we can get the folks who need better webcams, if that's an option. And I didn't get a chance to talk to Raul about that, but maybe what we can do is those of you who are struggling with your microphones and are having problems with your webcam, maybe you can let Raul know, and maybe we can look into getting some more decent webcams for those folks. And then Raul just sent out the historical budget that we're going to talk about, I think, at the next meeting. And so what the plan is here is to kind of look at the historical budget, look at the burn rate that we're looking at right now, and couple that with the Gantt chart that's coming out, and kind of have an idea of where we're headed with the budget, how many meetings we think we can afford, that kind of thing. But again, we're early days, and we'll get on that, as soon as we can. But the other things I think are more pressing at this point.
Do we have any questions or comments for the Finance Subcommittee? Yes, Commissioner Turner and then Fernandez.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification. Are we waiting through the Finance Committee to update the computers, or are we needing to submit something more on time? I thought that the computers, when they were received, that once we had our full commission, they were being switched out, as well as the phones. And so it sounds like I'm hearing something different, so I'd just like that clarified, please.
Okay, I hadn't heard about the computers being switched out. I thought we were just switching out the phones.
And it certainly could have been hopeful thinking. I don't know. I'm just asking at this point, what is the plan?
Okay, so you mentioned you were a Mac person, right?
Well, right, and I understand that the technology or the software won't work with a Mac. So
okay.
I did make peace with that. But it's still a very heavy, old computer to move around. And so I just was still in the mindset that this was a temporary piece of equipment that was going to be upgraded with the phones.
Okay, yeah, that wasn't part of my thinking. I'll just share. I guess I didn't share. I thought we might be looking at getting, a few computers that can run ArcGIS, but I mean, maybe that's not the right approach. Maybe we need to think of a different approach there. And that's raising a lot of hands.
Commissioner Fernandez, Sinai, and then Kennedy.
Yeah, I think in the last meeting where we were there's a few people that are having issues. I think it's Commissioner Sinai is having issues with her computer, and there's a few others, and those were going to be replaced. And then I just wanted to add a little bit more on the budget committee. Raul did forward some contracts that we'll be reviewing for discussion on Friday for agenda item number 10. And again, in terms of the budget that he's putting together, it'll show obviously what 2010, what their budget was and what their expenditures were. And then we'll start a budget for 2020, showing the expenditures and what expenditures and encumbrances. Because obviously that'll give us a good idea of at some point in time if we need to go back and request additional funds. But at some point in time when we hire the budget or finance person, hopefully that'll be their task in terms of continuing to look at those line item detail. So that's all I had.
Thank you. I listened in on the NCLS free webinar on technology and redistricting, and there's a ton of questions that we need to look through and think through, and if we're each going to have one or if we're going to do one that's online. And so maybe Commissioner, we could just have to wait a little to make any decisions like that, because I think there'll be a lot of budget questions. I do recommend the webinar. Karen, who's presented to us, was one of the presenters, and there's just a lot of stuff I didn't know about that helped me feel like, okay, now I know what to do.
What, can you send a link to that?
Yeah, I can send it out to all of you. It was part of the link that was sent out last meeting of all the different trainings, but I'll send out the link to just that one again, because I know Google Mail is not very easy to manage. So I'll get it out to y'all.
Okay, so, I mean, you know, there are web-based mapping applications too, but then there's, you know, we gotta consider security issues in the big picture too. I was also kind of waiting, I guess, I apologize, Commissioner Lamont. I should have my act together a little bit better than I do right now, and I should be telling the full story. But you know, we're getting this presentation on redistricting software. You know, the state database is making you know, is putting together a free tool to use. You know, I kind of thought we had a little bit of time to better understand what was happening down the road and make a decision on what we were going to do with computers for mapping and that kind of thing. But it sounds like there's two different issues here. It sounds like some people have computers that just aren't working for them at this point, and we should get them computers that work. And then we need to come up with a strategy and figure out what we're doing with how we're going to manage mapping software and doing that work.
Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
You know, I understand the idea that we definitely need to figure out the software that the state's proposing. And that's why I thought we were waiting on the computers. But if people are having issues right now and need new computers, we don't want to be getting different kinds of computers based on, you know, oh, well, okay, that'll do, you know, that's kind of good enough, but not good enough. You know, it's like it's okay, but not good enough. And the idea that all of us don't have a computer that can do the software, I have a real problem with. That means we can't, you know, we can't do our jobs. I mean, that's like, you know, I mean, our jobs are to draw the lines. And if our computers aren't going to handle the software, then that's a problem. I don't see any other way to put it nicely. That's just inadequate, because that's our job to draw the lines. And we need to get their information and everything around it, but that's a basic. So we will have to have, and it's not that different in terms of, you know, if these computers, which are indeed heavy, if it doesn't have enough memory, you know, then that's something, the cost of getting a new computer that's updated and a new computer that has enough memory is not that different. And it's something that I think is a mandatory thing we need to have. I mean, I don't think I can say it any more distinctly that, you know, that's something we got to have. So, but I would rather than, let's wait until, let's find out what the software is, what we'll need, and then get the computers all at one time. And I don't think that needs to be too delayed. I just don't know in terms of the cost how that will actually fit in. But that would be my vote, rather than getting people a couple of computers now, unless we're just temporary things, to make sure it's the same computer that everyone can work with.
Commissioner Kennedy, Taylor, and Akutagawa.
Nothing at this point, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, so I agree. If we're not going to move to something that's web-based map drawing, I would think a simple point of litigation in the future would be that these commissioners don't even have a computer that can draw a map, and they're responsible for a map. I would think that's something that we'd want to cut off. That's it.
Commissioner Akutagawa and then Hernandez.
Yeah, I'm going to pile on that, and I'll also agree. One thought that I have is in terms of the computers, as much as I would love to have something that would be more Mac-like, excuse me, with Commissioner Turner, perhaps, sorry about that, is there an option to perhaps upgrade the memory, the RAM on the current computers so that it can handle the software? Just want to throw that out. And I'm not very computer savvy on these things, but that is something that we've done at my organization where we need to have more computing power.
Sorry, Neil, did you want, I mean, I might just jump in. On a laptop, updating your memory, the cost of taking it in and updoing it, it doesn't, add more memory isn't much, but if there are other glitches, then you kind of have to have different memory with it. There's a downtime, there's basically the cost of putting it in. It's typically more expensive than getting a new machine.
I don't think these computers have the horsepower, even if they had enough memory.
Commissioner Fernandez and then Vasquez, I saw your hand up.
Just a quick question to Raul. Raul, how long will it take to get new computers at the point in time when we decide, okay, we have a line drawer, we want to make sure we have computers that it's going to be compatible with that? Regarding the procurement process, I think it's somewhat lengthy, but I remember you said something at the last meeting. I don't have the specific time frame.
You can probably count on about 6 weeks to get computers. As the discussion is going on, two issues that I'm kind of having trouble understanding. Two individuals indicated that they were having trouble with their computers, and when I reached out, well, specifically to Commissioner Sinek, who's having the blue screen of death, the response I got back was, I think I have it now. I'll let you know if I continue to have any problems. And so I haven't really heard from anyone that they're having these detrimental problems with the computers being inoperable. And so I am a little surprised, and I would like to let you know, if you are having issues with your computer, please let me know, because otherwise, I don't know.
Commissioner Vasquez, Kennedy, and then Turner.
Yeah, I mean, I think that two separate issues. There's the immediate troubleshooting of specific computers right now, and then perhaps maybe, I'm not sure which committee this would go to, but it sounds like we should all think through what our wish list would be for new computers, emphasize that, and then either this interim, hopefully IT person or a committee or something comes up with a proposal. Here are the laptops we think everyone should have based on what we know will need to be the minimum to run the software. Like for me, ideally, I would love to not have an external camera, so I'd like a computer that already has a camera built in. That is thin enough and light enough that I can travel with, but also has the horsepower to run the software. So it sounds like we need to come up with a wish list of what our ideal mission work computer looks like, and then go out and get that for everyone.
Commissioner Kennedy and then Turner.
Nothing at this point, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And I think good for the conversation. I just wanted to say that, Raul, for sure, my computer, I don't believe is broken. And I think it's a matter of setting expectation. Our initial counsel that we had, I can't think of her name right at the moment. But of course, when I initially reached out at the surprise that it was not a Mac or just whatever to talk about it, the thing that I was told at that time is that these were temporary computers and they would be being switched out, which is why the age of the computer, the not attached camera, and the corded mouse and all those things to me said, oh, okay, it's a transitional computer. So I've been waiting for it, because if you are mobile, moving from place to place, it is quite cumbersome. It fits in no computer bags that are current. And so it just is we need to be able to get into them. We should not be pulling it up on our own computers and what have you. And I'm trying to adhere to that and carry it around. So not that it's not operational, it's just that I was expecting to have it changed out, and that's what I was looking for.
Yes, Commissioner Fornashari and then Zadwani.
I'll let Commissioner Segwani go first.
Very briefly to say, I agree with Commissioner Turner. That was my understanding as well from the previous council.
Interesting.
Okay, well, I'll just offer then to take the action to dig more deeply in understanding the software and the requirements for the software, the variety of software out there. I'll try to get a hold of the statewide data, or I will not try, I will get a hold of the statewide database and understand, what they're planning on doing with their software and what the requirements are to work. But I'll look around at the variety of different software that may be used for mapping and make sure I understand the computer requirements for that. And then I'll get with, Alicia and I will do this, volunteering her to, and then get with Raul to understand the procurement process and what, if there's some limitations on what we can buy, and bring that back. And Commissioner Anderson's waving frantically.
I'm just waving frantically because, look, I'm a structural engineer I do drawings, and that's sort of in my wheelhouse in terms of what you need and what's out there. So I would be more than willing to help out with this. And yeah, I have a small, nice, light laptop that will fly and will do AutoCAD, which is way more cumbersome than any of the GIS software. So I would be more than happy, if we need a subcommittee that's just doing that, or the line drawing subcommittee, or I would love to put in my 2 cents because it's something that I think I can save us all a lot of time with.
Just one warning that you need to have a subcommittee of no more than 2 people. So if Commissioner Anderson wants to get involved, maybe there could be a separate computer
I'm relinquishing
research.
that piece of it to Commissioner Anderson. How's that?
I'll take it, but I think there's other comments.
Commissioner Lamont?
I think Commissioner Anderson opened the door to the practice I made earlier about wanting to address something. So we had a discussion earlier, and I was very serious about troubleshooting subcommittee chair. So I'm actually inviting you to appoint one. And it sounds like earlier was Commissioner Anderson who also expressed some interest, and I'd be willing to support her. And we could not just take this on, but I think other things that need to be troubleshooted and working with staff, you'd have a dedicated team of people who are giving some attention to that at your pleasure.
I would totally love that idea because it would be just specific troubleshooting rather than an entire topic. Like, it's not the finance committee, this is an element of that. Getting our communications cleared up. It's not part of the communications. It's like the weird little pieces, the trouble part of that. And I would totally second Commissioner Lon's idea that it could be a separate little subcommittee, and I'd be more than willing to chair if that's, to be on that subcommittee, if the chair would so approve.
Any questions, comments? Yes, Commissioner Fernandez?
So it would not be Commissioner Fornaciari, it would be Anderson and Demons. I just want to make sure that I'm clear for my agenda for next time in terms of what they'll be presenting. Yeah?
So I just wanted, before I don't know what the formal process, before I embark on the formal process, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with this. So what is being proposed on the floor is to appoint a new subcommittee, which will be the troubleshooting subcommittee. They will take on tasks that come up throughout our meetings and between meetings, I'm assuming? Yes? Can I get a nod? Okay. Do we want to clarify what kinds of troubleshooting, or is that something that we as a group will just say, hey, this looks like it belongs to the troubleshooting subcommittee? Yes? Okay. Commissioner Sadwani?
I would just say that it would be very specific to the operational needs of the commission. But it's not operational line drawing when we get to that point, right? Or thinking about communities of interest or something of that nature, but it is very specific to operational issues.
Commissioner Lamont, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, I'm flexible on what the topics are. I think little things are going to come up. Like, what I'm not suggesting is that we're circumventing the current standing committees at all. So I want to be very clear. So I'm not suggesting to replace what Commissioner Fornashari is doing with regards to finding out the what's required for the software on the line drawing. No, we're not. I'm not suggesting we take that part on. He's doing that. What triggered it for me, why I've been thinking about it earlier, because we had other issues that kind of sit out there. And if there's some communication that needs to happen specific to those issues, fill in the blank with staff, it may be a procedural thing that we need to understand, or so it would just be bringing, that support information to the council each time, to the commission each time, so that helps inform whatever decisions, but it isn't specific to any of the other subcommittees. And I think in this case, Commissioner Anderson just happens to have an expertise when it comes to equipment, hardware, and software for laptops or portable computers. So this just happens to be one of those things. But we can, if you appoint it, we can more specifically at each meeting decide what that is. And say, okay, we'd like the troubleshooting subcommittee to look into XYZ, whatever that is. It could be broad or narrow as the commission wants.
Great. I already have a few items for your to-do list at the end of this meeting. Commissioner Fornashari?
Yeah, I think that though the requirements for the line drawing software are going to inform, the specifications for the computers that we decide we want to get. So so I'm happy to continue to get those specifications if you'd like, or I could pass it on to the troubleshooting committee to do that too. Either way, but I'm not. If I do it, I'm not sure how to communicate that without breaking the rules.
I might just say that a bit of coordination through the our staff, I think, would easily facilitate that, because it should probably have this, this criteria, and I think it would facilitate, it would help your process going. If I have this, does all the software work? And they'll say yeah, or they might say yeah, but oh no, we don't need that. Particular chip capacity or amount of storage. I think it could, a bit of coordination through the staff could help you in all the different softwares, just almost more like do a checklist. It would help facilitate.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll look at the software. I'll get a summary together. It's going to be a quad-core i7 with tons of memory, and a huge hard drive and super
and good graphics card.
Yes.
I see Commissioner Vasquez and Lamont.
So my understanding is from other boards that an issue can cross-cut committee through staff. Correct? So there's going to be finance implications based on whatever troubleshooting committee finds as proper computers. So it seems like there should be some coordination through staff between two subcommittees, potentially on this issue or others, right? That the troubleshooting folks are going to take the lead, and then whomever needs to sort of weigh in will also be appropriately legally looped in through staff. Correct?
That will work, yes.
Yeah. Commissioner Lamont?
Yeah, I was going to say, but I realized it won't work. I was going to say I'm also willing to step back and have Commissioner Fornashari and Anderson run with it, but I realize they can't, so I'll stay. That's all.
Nice try.
Right, nice try.
So I will go ahead and appoint Commissioner Anderson and Lamont to the troubleshooting subcommittee. Yes, Raul.
I just wanted to add, before you go too much further, IT's done through statewide contracts. And so you have a pool of equipment that's already there, been contracted, priced out, et cetera. When you start stepping outside of that, you're basically asking somebody to custom develop it for you. And so go ahead and add a few more weeks onto that process, plus delivery time, plus cost. They don't make it easy. This is the first that I've heard about these computers being temporary. These computers, just leave it at that. That's the first I've ever heard of that. So the fact that other commissioners were told that, I'm going to follow up on that, because these aren't temporary, or that was not the intention.
Commissioner Lamont?
I was going to say, like, this, what just happened right here is a great example of what the troubleshooting committee would do, is get to the bottom of all these variables so that we know the frame that we can and cannot operate within, or we know the considerations and impact of all these different variables, and then just bring that. We're like fact finders, and bring the information back so that your decisions can be made with the broadest swath of correct information. So I just wanted to say that.
Commissioner Kennedy, do you have anything to add at this point?
Nothing at this point. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so Commissioners Anderson and Lamont, you all will be troubleshooting for us.
Yes.
Thank you. There is one subcommittee that is not listed explicitly, but does still fall under agenda item number 9, which is the Outreach and Engagement Subcommittee. We must break at 12:45, so hopefully we can cover that subcommittee content in the next 10 minutes. Commissioners Vasquez and Sine?
I feel like I already shared at the beginning, so I don't know if you want to add anything, Commissioner Vasquez. Basically, right now, we're just trying to understand the lay of the land in 2010, but also understand best practices, thinking through what can help us all together think through 2020. And I did want to publicly thank the collaborative letter that we got from public comments, because I was getting ready to create something like that. So thank you for doing a much better job than I could have ever done it for everybody. I think the only thing I would want to add is I saw that on the agenda we may have space to have a speaker. I think it's important that the reason we started our conversations with the philanthropy is because we do have a $2 million budget, and last time Irvine Foundation invested $3 million, and that was 10 years ago. And so I think it's important to understand where those outside of the commission are complementing the work we're doing, what we need to do, and thinking through how we go deeper. There's different levels. So, Commissioner Kennedy, for some reason your phone is okay. So that's just why we haven't gone to the community groups and had any conversations. It's been more understanding the big picture, for figuring out how to bring the big picture to you all. Commissioner Vasquez?
Yes, I thank you for that summary. I also wanted to add that part of my lens in this engagement is to increase access to folks, both sort of in this hopefully more strict quarantine time of this pandemic, but also wanting to plan for this whole process to be as accessible as possible across the state, because even if in an ideal world, we're in a much more socially open landscape across the state, there will still be, I think there's still definitely an opportunity for us to build on what is being created in terms of virtual engagement, both on the public side, but also privately through, online digital organizing, etc. So that's how I have been approaching these conversations with folks in terms of best practices, because I do think even in a post-vaccine world, I still think that we as a commission can do all we can virtually to increase engagement with those folks who are not able to attend in-person meetings if and when we're able to have them.
Do we have questions or comments for the Outreach and Engagement Subcommittee? Yes, Commissioner Lamont.
My question is the community collaborative letter that we received. And I know you guys are working on the big picture portion right now, but for example, something like that, how would you, and this is, I guess, so when something like that comes in, would this be the appropriate committee? And I know that that wasn't specific to just outreach, it's, you know, global, but would you take that list and explore it and then come back with recommendations? Okay, so, all right, that's what I was wondering. Maybe give us just a little insight into how you would do that, like what we can expect as a commission around something. This is just an example.
So we haven't had a chance to really think through all the pieces. So we don't have an official report, but my thought was, my thought process has been, we had that regional map last time they broke up California into regions. I think we need to look at that regional map together. So that's kind of the first step, is for all of us to understand that regional map. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of all of it, but think through the regional map, because that's going to be our guide then to outcome, you know, to moving from there. Understand what's covered by those community groups in that regional map. So I was glad that they gave their areas. And then thinking through, there's national players, there's regional players, but then we also need to think through the local players that will help on the outreach. And then on top of that, another layer on all this is, how do we use technology, and what technology is working well out there, and how do we learn from, how do we use the census infrastructure that was created. So those are some of the, more than anything, what I've been trying to do is just uncover those questions that we can bring to the group with some speakers to answer those questions based on the stuff that I had pulled out last time we all met and things kept coming up. Does that help?
Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you. It was definitely along sort of the regional lines, and I was wondering, that letter was wonderful, and I really appreciate it. I was specifically looking at the locations in regional, and I was wondering if the outreach committee, you could possibly talk to some of those groups, and otherwise, because what of course I was looking at is where they all were and what was missing. And except for, you know, I think it was PICO, and obviously, you know, Common Cause, League of Women Voters, League of Conservation Voters, they're like the statewide, but PICO was and PICO actually had up north. Everyone else is down south, and the areas that were really.
PICO's actually PICO's based up north, but
yes.
they have local groups throughout. So like San Diego Organizing Project is a local one. So a lot of those do have local.
If you could possibly, where we need help is particularly up north, and particularly given all the fires. Essentially, that entire section of our state, even the organizations that might already be there have been or will have been displaced. So if any of those members have connections elsewhere, you know, that's something I think I hope we could certainly, that people will be bringing to our group, because I think that's going to be a really hard area for us to work on. So I just want to make sure that, I'm sure you were aware of that, but I just want to make sure we brought that up.
Well, and I think speaking with Amy, who's the consultant both with the California Philanthropy last time, and was with Irvine last time and with California Philanthropy this time, one of the things that she said is that there aren't exactly what you said, and their funding again, was 3 million last time, and this time $1 million with only they've already spent 600 on getting folks through kind of to apply. So they only have 400 left for outreach, and that RFP is going out this week. So that's a very different map than the map that we had before. So when we have the conversation, how do we make grants and contracts a funding map? You can't just ask groups to do work without giving them that support and the money to have the outreach workers doing that work. So that's why we need to have that conversation, but understanding the money and the regions and all that. And then what can we do to support those groups that are on the ground that need the funding to be able to do this?
Yes, Commissioner Kitagawa.
I think what I just want to make sure I'm hearing things correctly. I think what I heard Commissioner Anderson perhaps asking about is how are we going to reach those organizations? And they may not come with titles like, with civic engagement in those titles. It could be like a Humboldt County Community Foundation that knows the really micro players or the organizations that are in those areas that perhaps don't necessarily come to the attention of like the Irvine Foundation or even some of the other larger players. And they may be in coalition, but given everything that's going on, it wouldn't be surprising that they're, possibly offline for right now. So I think I just want to say, I think we need to really be expansive in who we're looking at and not just limit ourselves to the civic engagement groups, that there may be other organizations in my experience, where they may not have the kind of right organization name, but end up doing a lot of different things just because they're the only ones up there. So just want to be mindful of that in terms of particularly the far north. So
I know we
Madam Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been thinking about this quite a bit as well, trying to come up with some thoughts on, who has networks statewide. And I know that last time there was a statewide network of, I think, 6 redistricting information centers that UC Berkeley set up, or the statewide database set up. But 6 to me is not nearly enough. And so thinking about this, 2 entities that came to mind that the outreach committee may want to consider and do some more research on. One is the California Libraries Association. So local libraries are throughout California, and how can we engage with the Library Association to get information out? I think this would also be very important when we start taking public input on maps. If every public library in California had someone or had equipment available to members of the public to come in and draw their own maps and submit them from their local public library rather than having to find one of 6 information centers statewide. To me, that would be an enormous expansion of our outreach footprint. And the other entity that came to mind was California community colleges. There are 90-some California community college districts, and some of those districts have multiple colleges. Many, if not all, have political science faculty who could be trained by us to provide information and assistance and information to the public. And so those 2 networks, I think, if we can find a way to engage with them, would really ramp up our public outreach footprint down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Vasquez?
Yeah, if I could just respond to both of the previous 2 comments. My goal and my hope is also to do, again, a landscape analysis to try to find where there are potential gaps in terms of our direct connection to community groups, organizers, anyone who's sort of civically engaged in these more local areas, particularly up north, because I have also a laundry list of potential folks in terms of categories whom I think I would love to be directly connected with in terms of the commission. So, you know, schools, school boards, you know, as Commissioner Kennedy said, community colleges, there are groups who are civically engaged at the hyperlocal level that I'm sure, you know, would love to hear from us, but maybe aren't engaged currently. So absolutely, I don't think we should rely on sort of rely solely on the big names and the big players. But that also I think it's on us as a commission to proactively reach into those and tap into those local networks, especially those that aren't as well represented at a statewide level.
So we are right up at break. I wanted to ask if we need some more time after lunch to continue this conversation, or are we agreeing to continue this particular conversation when we come back to open session on Friday? What are thoughts around that? Commissioner Turner, Sinai?
I can certainly wait until later.
Commissioner Sinai?
I think, as I said, since we weren't on the agenda, we didn't really prepare anything, but knowing what you all are thinking, I think it's very easy for us to prepare something for our next meeting that's coming up that'll answer more of the questions. The only reason I'm looking at Irvine was just because they were such a strong funder. But my background is all Community Foundations United Way giving circles. And I also am really, the census, this time around, the census blocks that were created are amazing. And those are private, public, all healthcare, the healthcare foundations public clinics are very engaged in census and in voting registration and all that. So there's a lot of entities out there. So I think we're in a good place to build on what was started. So we'll get that all succinct for you guys next time.
Thank you for your report. Commissioner Turner, I just wanted to ask if your comment was related to subcommittees, or if it's
I basically was going to say that I am a PICO California Federation, and so I know that they are throughout all of California, and they're actually a federation made up of a lot of smaller organizations, and so that's all I was going to add back when that was the topic.
Okay, thank you. I asked because I think we need to make a very clear distinction of what's going to happen next in our agenda. And this is also related to our technical support and our videographers as well. So we are now at 12:51. We will break for 1 hour for lunch and then go into closed session.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Kennedy.
Sorry. I'm wondering if inviting public comments on the discussion that we've just had might be useful, helpful, and then go into closed session after lunch.
So are you suggesting public comment when we return from lunch?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any objection to that or other recommendations? Are we okay with that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So when we return from lunch at 1:51, we will take public comment on anything and everything that has been discussed so far on our agenda, and then we will move into closed session. Just so the commissioners are aware, please keep an eye out on your inbox. You will receive further instructions on how to access closed session. Any questions before we break? Okay, see you all in 1 hour at 1:53. All right, seeing no callers in queue. Christian, would you be so kind to remind my colleagues and myself of what the process looks like for joining into the closed session?
Certainly, Chair. So by now you should have hopefully received the instructions for joining by Zoom. And so after we adjourn out of this session, we'll go into a separate Zoom meeting. And you should all have that information now.
Great. So in order to troubleshoot some unanticipated, if there are unanticipated glitches, let's try to be on that Zoom link by 2:04. So if you have any issues, please make sure that Christian, Raul, and staff are also aware of that as we transition into closed session. And before we jump over, just so that folks are aware, we will be in closed session for the remainder of today and through tomorrow. And we will jump back into open session on Friday. Do we have any questions or comments at this time regarding this process? Alrighty, I will see.
Chair Ahmad?
Yes.
I just wanted to note, I will not be attending the closed session. I have recused myself from the process. So if anyone is having any problems, if they could email Christian or Marilyn.
Commissioner Turner?
No, you were closing. I just wanted you to see Raul's hand.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Raul, for that update. All right, we will meet again in closed session, and we will see everyone from the public back on Friday.